Number 15 on the countdown of the best in horror 2019 through 2020 goes psychologically dark. Pitch dark, that is. Let's take a deep dive into the abyss. Welcome to the official Best in Horror 2019-2020 countdown on ML Miller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. Be sure to give this video a like, share it with your buddies across the electronic superhighway, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you're in the Chicago area and love horror, you have no excuse not to head over to the Chi-Town Movies Drive-In for the Music Box of Horrors. Every night in October for 31 Nights of Horror, there will be late shows Sunday through Thursday and double features every Friday and Saturday night. Every weekend is themed: Grindhouse Fridays, Rip-Off Saturdays, and Sequel Sundays. Tonight they're playing a double feature of the original Friday the 13th, as well as its Indonesian rip-off, Srigala, which looks to be a pretty insane riff off of the Camp Crystal Lake massacre. Look below for a link to the schedule, where to get tickets, and directions to this awesome horror event. Coming in at 15 is Daniel Isn't Real. It was released on December 6th, 2019, and is available on digital download and on demand from Samuel Goldwyn Films. It's also streaming on Shudder. Daniel Isn't Real is directed by Adam Egypt Mortimer, and it's written by Mortimer and Brian DeLeeuw. Miles Robbins, a.k.a. the asshole boyfriend from Halloween, plays Luke, the victim of a troubled childhood, full of neglect and mental illness. Shortly after a young Luke stumbles across a crime scene, he discovers an imaginary friend following him around. Naming his new friend Daniel, Luke is over the moon, and the two get into adventure after adventure together. But when a prank on his mom backfires, Luke decides to defriend Daniel, banishing him inside a dollhouse. Flash forward to Luke in college, and he's struggling with life to fit in, finding a purpose, and dealing with his mother's declining mental health. When his therapist urges Luke to revisit his time with Daniel, Luke reawakens the imaginary friend, now in adult form, played by Patrick Schwarzenegger, son of Arnie. Though the two begin their friendship right where they left off, boyhood fantasies turn into real adult problems, and Daniel's wild side begins having deadly ramifications on Luke's life. Soon the two begin a desperate fight over Luke's body and soul. While there were moments that resemble what might come from an unholy union of Jacob's Ladder, Fight Club, and Right Said Fred, Daniel Isn't Real still manages to entertain and highlight that filmer Adam Egypt Mortimer has what it takes to make a moody, suspenseful thriller. What Daniel Isn't Real gets right is the mental illness aspect that permeates the entire story. This is an expertly crafted story about the disintegration of a human mind, the fears of inheriting mental illness, and theorizes as to where mental illness comes from. All supernatural elements aside, I love the therapy scenes where Luke fears he will become as mentally ill as his mother. This doesn't feel like psychobabble watered down and presented in a glamorized Hollywood lens. This film did its homework and lays out a terrifying view of mental illness with an unflinching touch. It doesn't fetishize mental illness. It shows all of the ugly details that affect people suffering from it. Daniel Isn't Real is a dark and moody-looking film, full of saturated reds and blues that reflect the mood of the scene. The entire film is made with deep shadows and overpowering black voids. It gives a sort of nihilistic and hopeless vibe to the entire film, much like the anarchist views of Daniel himself. This is a good-looking and, more importantly, visually effective film that will take you into dark places and stomp your brains in. While it is evident from the start, there's a supernatural aspect to this film that I wasn't sure about. Unfortunately, all of this is not taking place in Luke's head. I didn't mind these details, but I feel that the film doesn't really need it. It does such a bang-up job strictly in the realm of psychological horror that I think the supernatural slant isn't really necessary. The violence has reverberations and consequences. This character study takes its horror seriously, just how us horror fans like it. Arnie's son Patrick is charismatic and threatening, yet still has that Trump son swarm that makes him instantly dislikable. Miles Robbins is strong too, as the film rests on his shoulders despite the fact that we are wondering if any of this is real or not. Daniel Isn't Real requires the two leads to go to dark places, and both achieve this deftly. Daniel Isn't Real is a true standout in horror. Mortimer definitely pulls no punches and delivers a very gritty and memorable film. Another imaginary friend nightmare is Z. It was released in November 7th, 2019, and it's streaming on Shudder. Z was directed by Brandon Christensen, and it was written by Christensen and Colin Minihan. Beleaguered housewife Beth, Keegan Connor Tracy, is coping with a mother on her deathbed, a husband who is hardly present, played by Sean Rogerson, and an ornery son Josh, who is having major behavioral troubles at school. When he is suspended indefinitely, Josh creates an imaginary friend named Z, to which he puts all of the blame on for his bad behavior. As Josh's friendship with Z becomes stronger, it begins scaring Beth, so she reaches out to the family psychiatrist, Dr. Seeger, played by Stephen McHattie, who has vital information about Josh's new friend that seems to have some kind of connection with Beth. Z is a solid shocker with a multitude of legitimate jolts, jumps, and shocks. Filmmaker Christensen piles on quite a few of these scenes, one after another, as the film delves into some heavily psychological and metaphysical issues that plague Beth and her family. It's a big mess involving past trauma that gives a real-world edge to all of the paranormal stuff going on. Halfway through, Z shifts gears from a typical paranormal phenomenon film to something much more psychologically complex and dark. While normally this would be where the film skids off its tracks, Z manages to stay the course. A lot of that has to do with the strong performances by lead actress Keegan Connor Tracy as Beth. There are moments where things get extremely nuts, but because director Christensen and actress Tracy take things seriously, the scenes continue to work masterfully. What frustrates me, though, was Hattie's role as the psychiatrist. He's called a doctor, so I imagine he is a man of science, but McHattie's Dr. Seeger seems to fully believe in the power of the paranormal. Instead of investigating as to whether Z is a symptom of an early onset of schizophrenia or depression, he leaps to the conclusion that Z is real. I think this plot hole could have been fixed with one line. Maybe when Beth takes Josh to Seeger, someone calls him a quack or a witch doctor who has unconventional methods. That's all I would have needed to believe in Dr. Seeger's out-of-the-box thinking. McHattie is always fantastic in any role he takes, but still, the character needed some reason for believing in Z so quickly and so fully. I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but Christensen straddles the fence as to whether Z is a figment of a troubled mind or an actual paranormal entity. Again, I think this could have been fixed with some short scenes about people creating evil entities by sheer force of will, combined with their own trauma. It is hinted at, but I think Christensen plays it a little too subtle, and there needed to be some kind of explanation as to the origins of Z and how it came to be. It appears that Z might be the product of some kind of past sexual or physical abuse. I say this because the few times we do see Z, he's very disturbing. He looks like a lanky, naked, and twitching old man. But again, we don't really get to find out about his histories and what it means to our lead. Only seen in well-placed blinks and creepy glimpses, it makes for an original-looking and utterly imposing movie monster. On the surface, Z can be taken as a successful paranormal story. It's not a ghost story, but something much more psychologically bent. Had there been a few elements fleshed out, it would have been a perfect, scary film. As is, Z is still worth a recommendation for its strong performances, foreboding atmosphere, and electrifying fright sequences. But Z does not go as deep and dark as I think it could have. That'll be it for today. Check back in tomorrow for my next pick on the countdown. Please chime in down in the comments and let me know what you think of these films, how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own list. If you like this video, please pound that thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. That's where you can find the rest of this countdown as well. Don't forget I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks that you should look for. GRAVETRANCERS is out right now, and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, will be out in late November, early December, Diamond Order Code APR 201712. And be sure to subscribe to this channel, and ring that bell for notifications, so you can be the first to see my future videos. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're